Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of June 24th, 2019. We are recording, as usual, from the lovely, and it is lovely today, Gardenside Moonyard Recording Studio in Tacoma, Washington. And today, we are talking about one of my favorite subjects, food.
Food, glorious food.
Glorious food. So welcome, everyone. Mitch Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher. Mitch is actually in the studio today, so it's kind of nice to see each other face to face.
In the flesh is always good.
It is always good.
But a virtual organization that can make a podcast from anywhere is also pretty cool. And, of course, Sarah is anywhere.
Sarah is. So our Earth911 writer, Sarah Lozanova. Sarah, where are you today?
I am in sunny Midcoast, Maine.
Great. And how are things in Maine today?
It's beautiful. The garden's thriving. It's feeling like summer.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best. I have to say, it's a little chilly here, but it's going to get nice later.
But, it's actually about right.
Is it?
But what we've had is a lot warmer spring, so It feels colder. And so what's happening is the pattern has changed.
I think that's right. But traditionally, you knew you weren't really going to get much of summer until 4th of July. Mm-hmm. But we've had
several 90-degree days.
Yeah, a really, really warm June. So our weather is unusual, which is becoming the usual.
Which is, of course, an anecdotal observation, but we would dare anybody to prove us wrong.
That's right. That's right. So summer is here. It's a perfect time to try some new foods and food-related activities. Maybe you have a garden. Maybe you just have a pot of herbs on your patio. Maybe you'd like to try a new ingredient or maybe make a vegan meal. No matter what your goal might be, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to find great food, make great food, and avoid food waste. Very important.
All three are critical to being better for the earth. But
let's start with something I hadn't heard of before, which is, what is your foodprint?
Well, Foodprints is a project of the Earth Day organization, the Earth Day Network, and you can find this at foodprints.earthday.org. It's part of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day that will be coming up in April of 2020. When that happens, the Earth Day Network hopes to get more than 1 billion people out to do work on behalf of the Earth and march in support of climate change and climate restoration. As part of that, they are introducing a whole series of projects about how to live more sustainably, and Foodprints is the first of those, and we are going to be working with Earth Day to get a lot of this information out. So what's a foodprint? According to the Earth Day Network, a foodprint measures the environmental impacts associated with the growing, producing, transporting, and storing of our food. So that means all the natural resources consumed and the pollution produced to move our food around. So what we're hoping to help people do is understand that water and carbon emissions are critically impacted by how they eat and what they choose to eat. For instance, I recently gave up lamb. Which was one of my favorite kinds of protein, because it is the worst in terms of carbon emission and water use of all the meats. Even more so than cows on a lamb per lamb basis.
I bet if you lived someplace that had a lot, like if you lived in New Zealand, I don't know if the impact would be quite the same.
The feeding would be the same, but the transportation
you wouldn't have the
would
travel.
Not. Localism, and localism is really what we need to be starting to focus on is getting what we need from nearby in order to reduce the transportation load. But even then, you have to choose the right kinds of foods to grow and buy. And so the Foodprint program has a whole set of resources that you can use to understand your foodprint. There are links to different calculators. There are background information articles about animal agriculture, so you can learn about the difference between lamb and cattle production versus and also about free range or grass-fed and so forth. There's also some great recipes being shared by some fine chefs that the Earth Day Network has recruited to help get the word out that you can eat great and eat healthily for both you and the earth. And then there's a set of calculators that you can use. They offer different calculators from third parties, so you can not just take Earth Day's word for it, but go check what the BBC has to say, Oxford University. And we're going to be helping to organize all this into some consumable content on the Earth911 site as well. So we're looking forward to doing that and getting those billion people out in the market,
Absolutely.
out into the world on 2020.
So would the calculator work so that if I was looking at, okay, I'm trying to decide what to make for dinner. Do I want to make a vegetarian chili or do I want to make something with salmon, locally sourced salmon? Would it allow me to sort of compare the environmental impacts of those two things?
Well, yeah. I think it's not as convenient yet as it will be.
Yeah.
But right now, most of the calculators are oriented around your sort of aggregate impact rather than around one meal.
That makes sense.
But what you'll see is that particularly in their Every Bite Counts section of the site, that they're working on how to articulate those kinds of choices so that, difference between using almonds or not in your recipes. So think in terms of the components of the recipe
sense.
rather than the recipe.
The recipe itself.
And so, almonds, for instance, take a tremendous amount of water. Just a cup of almonds takes 25 gallons of water.
Wow, that's a lot.
So this is a great education program, and we're going to be working with Earth Day to get more out about it. And you'll also be hearing some interviews with Earth Day leaders and the chefs, we hope.
That would be great. I would love to have that kind of information available. We did have an article last year that was pretty helpful. It was reducing your carbon footprint on food consumption and sort of talked more of an overview of, what foods to consider and why it matters. So, if you're interested while we're developing the Foodprint information, there is some information on the website right now.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a lot of it. And understanding our impact and understanding the trade-offs that we have to make in our lives is what we're really trying to help provide through Earth911. This is not about being perfect. Nobody can be perfect. In fact, I think one of the problems we have when we're talking about this is we tend to find the faults rather than the aim toward improvement.
This is a real common problem. I see it a lot in political arguments online, too, is that you may bring up a positive about one person. I really like this person's stand on environmental. It's like, yes, but what about their position on this? And it's like, well, there's going to be some variety. And the same is true in lifestyles. You're going to be, in some areas, you can do things that are perhaps more impactful. And in other areas, you might not be as impactful.
And it's your choice. And we can't take those choices away from people, but we have to help them understand the choices. Well,
and the fact that you can't do, let's say, 10 good things today doesn't mean you shouldn't do 2.
Exactly. Perfection is overrated.
And boring.
Yeah. Well, and perfection is uniform, which is the other thing I don't think we want.
One thing I've been wondering about, Mitch, is how much of a difference it makes if meat products are grass-fed versus grain-fed. I know for water overall consumption, it might not be different, but if the water is coming from rainfall instead of from irrigation.
Yeah, well, so that's the challenge is we don't have that kind of articulation of the supply chain at that level of detail. We talk in terms of overall. Right. So, the average American household emits 8.1 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent a year. All right. But what about my house? I don't know whether it's 8.1 or 7.2 or 3.4. We need to ask the same thing of the providers of food. Right. Why would we not want to know, in addition to whether the milk that we consume has growth hormones in it, but how it was raised, whether it was raised in a water sustainable way or not? Where'd the water come from? All those are great questions, and that's what I want us to be able to start to help people discover by essentially forcing the issue with the companies who provide our stuff.
Well, that's a really good lead-in, I think, to how you would go about this summer getting and growing the best foods. And the first item that I had on sort of our comprehensive list of ideas was just growing your own. And so, Sarah, I know you have a vegetable garden in your yard. What types of foods do you find that you are sort of your must-haves for the summer locally?
I like having some sort of a green growing in my garden all the time because I like eating salads and putting greens in soup. So I will start spinach, in the spring as soon as I can work the soil. Then I'll put in some Swiss chard and some kale. And so I like just always having greens around. And that's something that if you buy from the store, it's just not as fresh. So I really enjoy being able to harvest that. Herbs are another one that fall into that camp. Like if I buy a bunch of basil or cilantro, half of it goes bad. So I think it's really nice just to have fresh herbs, and they taste amazing. And tomatoes, nothing beats a garden tomato.
Yeah.
So I really like growing my own tomatoes too.
Yeah, that's what I grow, that I can reliably grow.
Tomatoes. Yeah, that's about. I mean, and this year, as I've admitted before, I'm always a strong aspirational gardener, and sometimes not the best in fact gardener. But being able to have your tomatoes from the yard is like the best thing in the world.
To pick it and eat it.
Yeah, so good. And I agree about the herbs. I mean, I will say I have a very successful herb patch. And the nice thing about having it growing in your own yard is that you then sort of look for more opportunities to use. I'll use rosemary in a lot of things that I wouldn't otherwise because it's so handy.
Well, Sarah mentions that she has a peach tree, and I envy her because I would love to have a peach tree. That's the fruit of choice at my house.
Yeah, I love peaches. Yeah, our Western Washington climate doesn't really favor that. Although I kind of think I have a sun patch in my yard, and I've thought if I put a breeze block wall up behind it, maybe I'd get enough radiant heat to grow a peach tree, but I don't know that I'll ever really.
There you go.
I don't know.
Yeah, and peaches, like tomatoes, they just taste completely different if you pick it and eat it while it's ripe and fresh, instead of picking it a week early and shipping it across the country. And
yeah, my memory of a fresh peach from my great-grandfather's farm in Indiana, where my grandmother said, "Go pick a peach." And this was when I was 9 years old, and I can still taste that peach as compared to every other peach I've ever had.
Yeah, we had a peach tree in our front yard in Southern California that I had planted from a peach pit that I had, because I had a very bad habit as a kid of like burying seeds around the yard to see what would happen. And this peach tree, it was wonderful and very, grew and grew peaches every year. And then it stopped, and and died. And that was it. That was the end of the peaches.
Yeah, peach trees have a relatively short life, unfortunately.
Yeah. Maybe.
My only tree success is bonsais.
Oh, bonsais?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No peaches on bonsais.
No, well, actually, you can grow an apple, a tiny little apple. In some cases, even a full-size apple on a tiny little tree. Huh. Fun facts to know and tell. But let's get back to localism.
Okay. Well, before we move on to shopping local, Sarah, I think you had some watering tips that you were going to share about, your summer garden.
Yeah, I actually put in a rain barrel. And so I've been watering my garden just from the rain barrels, which is really fun.
How large a capacity do you have?
It's 100 gallons. Unfortunately, my house doesn't have gutters, so I've only had it for a couple months, but the most I think I've gotten from a single rainfall has been about 50 gallons. But it's been a lot of fun. Like, my kids have been playing in it, and, it's been serving multiple purposes. So that's a good tip. Another one is to mulch, to put like some organic matter on top of the soil. It's a great way to keep down the weeds and stop soil erosion, but it also helps lock in the moisture.
And contributes nitrogen.
Planting natives, just especially for ornamental plants, trying to get away from some of these really thirsty ornamental plants. That can go a long way. Drip irrigation is supposed to be another great approach. To be honest, I haven't gone that route, or at least recently, but that's supposed to be a really good way to save water too, because then it delivers the water right to the root area, instead of spraying it down.
Yeah, so I think that the challenge there is having a fixed garden that you can put the drip system into, because it's not the easiest thing to move around. Yeah,
I think if you have like a definite vegetable patch or a raised bed or something, that it works really well. I haven't tried that either. We have a vegetable patch, and I think we could do it, but right now we have the rain barrels and can just put it. Well, so far we haven't really needed to do much, but
it's been raining.
Because it's been raining. But for our rain barrels, Sarah, I don't know how you do it, but our rain barrels, there's not any kind of flow assistance. So really, we're just putting it into a watering bucket, a watering can, and then hand watering from there.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing too, but mine has a spigot at the bottom, so I could hook up a hose, but I just feel like a pioneer when I'm filling up my watering can, and there's something fun. I feel like a homesteader when I do it. So.
Yeah. No, it feels really good to be making use of something that would just otherwise wash into the lakes and rivers.
What a crazy idea.
Another thing that saves water too is just thinking about where you site plants. So if you have plants that need more water, putting them in areas of the garden that tend to retain more moisture, like lower lying areas. And I did that for the first few years in my garden. But then now I've been kind of expanding because I want to keep planting stuff. But I have some lower lying areas and they tend to not be too swampy in the spring, and they retain more moisture in the summer. So I've needed to do very little irrigation, which helps a lot. Saves time too.
Well, and it gives, we were talking about the rhythm of the year earlier too. It gives you something to orient your life around that ties you to the earth. And I think that's something a lot of people forget, that, that's the basic fundamental value of doing this, is being tied into and being part of a system. Recognizing when things are in season and not.
And that's a good tie-in to shopping local, especially this time of year going to your local farmers markets.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, we have an article on being a locavore, and we'll have it in the promo for the podcast, but you can go to the Spruce Eats, which is a site that has all of the local growing seasons for your own garden and for your recipe preparation. So there's a link in the article to that. The other thing is great, and you'll see more and more of these all the time, are local farmers markets. And if you haven't explored going out and seeing what's being grown nearby and how it compares to what you get at the grocery store, especially if you set them side by side, which I do with cherries every year, or peaches, trying to find the best ones. That's a great experience of finding out how intimate your relationship is to your local food supply. You're going to meet the people who grow the stuff. They're going to know things that you will never find out from going to the grocery store.
Yeah, this is a really good article that Ann Sarah wrote this article a couple of years ago. Sarah, you mentioned in here using a CSA or a crop share type program. Have you done that recently?
Where I live, we have a worker share farm. And so basically we commit to, I think it's about 8 hours a month of work. And so we'll go to harvest the vegetables usually on Sundays. But there's similar types of farms often that don't involve a work contribution, where you can just get a box of these each. It's generally once a week. And some of them are more involved, like they might involve meat birds or cheeses or even some prepared foods like salsa. So it makes sense to shop around, especially if you live in an area with a bunch of local farms.
Yeah, we did a CSA a few years ago. It was probably more than 5 years ago. And it was like, the thing that I didn't like about it was actually the best part. And that is that what I didn't like that year was one of our really rainy years. And so the early vegetables were there wasn't a whole lot. It took a long time for the vegetables to get to the point where they were in the farm box, and so we got a lot of greens. We got turnip tops and radish tops and all kinds of things. And at first I sort of thought, well, this is like a big box of I don't know what clippings. But I tried using it and cooking it, and they were fantastic. And so I had never really experienced eating other vegetable greens that were not, spinach or kale or chard. And it really opened up a whole different view of, what you can use out of your vegetable yard.
It's a really good point. And I don't think CSAs are for everyone. Like if you just want peppers and tomatoes and spinach and carrots, you'll get a few of those, but you'll also get kohlrabi, and you'll get, like you said, radish tops and things like that. So you need to be kind of adventurous and open-minded about, trying out celeriac and things like that.
Although when I tried it, I loved celeriac.
Did you?
But it makes good soup. That's why I think that the farmers markets are sort of a step toward this. This is another one of those degrees of choice things. If you want to start to understand your local food supply, go do that. CSAs are interesting because they're also spawning international and national versions. And the one I'm looking at right now is crowdcow.com.
Wow.
And at CrowdCow, you essentially crowdsource some meat. But the meat is not a mystery. It's well documented how it's produced, the genetics of the cattle, how it was raised, and so forth at a bunch of different ranches around the world. Now, the problem here is that it's still stuff coming from a long way away. But what I would imagine we're going to see over time as all of these systems evolve and mature are crowd cow kind of services for your region or for your area. And so you might all be getting good, well-fed meat that you couldn't find at the grocery store, but is being delivered to you locally. And crowd cow is an example of that on a global scale right now. You can get Wagyu beef from Japan too. But I think what we need to do is concentrate that down to the most local opportunity possible.
Yeah. I mean, I will admit, after we did our CSA one year, we didn't do it again. And it was because, we got a lot of variety of foods that I enjoyed getting, but we didn't get the things that we sort of wanted to get anyway, like, fresh tomatoes and things like that. So we sort of found that for our two-person family, just going to the farmer's market and picking what we wanted actually made more sense.
And it's gratifying.
So gratifying.
Because especially when you get to taste and talk. And that's another story that we have on the site from Joanna Lacey, our green maven, who writes on Wednesdays about her childhood, basically. And she wrote this last week about the fruit and vegetable vendors that her mother learned to buy vegetables or produce from in the first place, and how important they were as a source of information, understanding the difference between what was ripe and what would be ripe in 2 days, where things came from. These folks actually know who they bought from, and in many cases represent sort of the spear point of localism 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I like to make jam, and whenever I'm going to the farmer's market to get fruit for jam, I will ask the farmer particularly, I'm making jam, apricot jam or something. I'm making apricot jam, so what do you have? It doesn't have to look good, but what are your most flavorful apricots for jam? And I'll tell you, almost every time they'll say, for jam, here, I have something over here that you're going to want. They are more than happy to give you something that is going to make everything work great because they know you're interested in their produce.
It's funny. I was reading the first chapter of Neil Stephenson's new book last night, and that happens to the character. He is pulled behind the counter at a bakery to be shown real apples from the Yakima Valley, and they're modeled and look like real apples do. And I won't spoil how that unfortunately leads to the substance of the story, but. It's interesting, this whole notion of being introduced and discovering the world around us through people that we interact with. We've lost that because of how industrialized and massified our communication is. Maybe one of the solutions in the circular economy is to just reconnect us all at the local level and see what we do.
Be nice.
It makes a lot of sense, especially in urban living, because a lot of people maybe just have room for a couple herb pots on their patio and really don't have the opportunity to grow a lot of food. And in an urban setting, especially being able to talk to farmers and hear about.
The thing to do is ask about recipes they have or that they know about. And that's a good way to expand your own cooking range.
I've been surprised how honest farmers will be, because a lot of times I'll go around and say, hey, is your, do you use synthetic pesticides? And a lot of them will say, well, yeah, we had this or that infestation, we sprayed, this long ago. And it surprises me because I think they probably know that ideally I'd like to hear that they aren't using synthetic pesticides, but a lot of them will go into detail and seem to really use more of an integrated pest management system and have put a lot of thought and care into it.
Yeah, and I think but they also will be the kinds of entities that will adopt more flexible approaches to growing and delivering their produce than, say, a Monsanto.
Well, and they're eating the food too. I mean, this is going onto their kitchen, in their kitchen, and onto their tables. So I think that they often, you're sort of talking person to person in a different way, and that's a nice thing.
Person to person.
Person to person. It's a nice thing. Yes. Well, what about cooking and preparing this wonderful food we have from our yards or from the farmer's market? We have some interesting articles on the website about, there's a 10 delicious vegan slow cooker dishes. There's a sustainable snack recipes article, and a really interesting article on baking with plant-based milk.
Yes, and that one with Lisa Barris put that together for us, and she did a great job of first explaining all the differences between the different kinds of plant
and why
milks.
some are good for baking and others are good for something else.
Right, and so and it's interesting because you've got like almond milk, which is 10 times more water intensive than pea milk.
Right.
And she covers all of that, teases out some of the details in terms of their usefulness in different cooking settings. She also has some other articles about using non-dairy not in baking in other foods. But what she's done is give you the basis for making those kinds of choices about if you're baking, what kind of milk should you be using, and understanding why it's going to have a benefit or not have a benefit for the environment.
Yeah. We just, we have a local co-op that just opened in Tacoma, and yesterday we bought almond milk because Joe, my husband, wanted that for smoothies, and I bought the Ripple pea-based milk that we've had, that you had an interview with the guy who's behind that. And I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really interested in trying it. And Mitch just had a bite of, I made on the sustainable snack recipes, one of them is for vinegar and salt chickpeas, roasted chickpeas, which I made last night, and
delicious.
Crunching up right now.
Crunchy. I don't have a glass of water, but
one thing that I really like about making my own milk products, vegan milk products, is that it reduces packaging so much, and they're really easy to make.
How do you make
throw
them?
It in the blender. Like for example, when I've made almond milk, I take raw almonds. I usually soak them in water for 6 or 12 hours, and then I throw it in a blender. And if you have a high speed blender, that's ideal.
Yeah.
Throw it in the blender for about a minute, and then I pour it through it's like a milk bag. It's like a really fine cheesecloth. And then you have your milk, and you can add other things, like if you want to add some vanilla extract or a little honey or agave syrup or things like that. But then you can also take the byproduct that you collect in the bag and put that in things like I've made. I've added that to cookies then and things like that. So especially if you don't waste the byproduct.
What do you think the most useful natural cooking ingredient you use is and that you rely on most?
By natural cooking ingredient, do you mean things that are more for flavoring and such?
What's your most staple natural ingredient?
I guess, something that you have to have in your cupboard or fridge all the time.
My kids have a sweet tooth, and so I end up sweetening with honey a lot. That would be something that's hard to live without. And I live in an area where there's a lot of maple syrup, so honey and maple syrup we use quite a bit. I don't know that I have just one kind of staple that I put in things.
Yeah, see, I would say rice is ours.
Oh, interesting.
Rice. Yeah, mine would have to be extra virgin olive oil. I use that in almost anything.
Yeah, I don't use any other kind of oil generally, except in baking.
Yeah.
I've been using avocado oil more.
Oh, really? Does it have an avocado-y taste, or does it just have a sort of a buttery taste?
Yeah, it doesn't really have much of a taste at all. It has less of a taste than olive oil.
Well, you also have some recipes for granola bars. We have a recipe for baked Parmesan kale chips. And these are all via various sources that we aggregated. Sea salt fennel chips. Nothing for celeriac, unfortunately.
No, you have to come up with a recipe for that.
But there you go. And each of these is pretty easy to make, takes less than a half hour, and are good for you.
Yeah, I have to say, so these chickpeas, not actually the best thing to be eating while you are trying to talk on a microphone. But they were very easy. You soak a can of garbanzo beans, soak them in vinegar for about a half an hour, drain that, and then you roast them in the oven with some olive oil and salt. Now, I think you could do it in different ways. I think I used a little too much olive oil. These are a little oily, but for a first-time attempt, they're not bad.
Yeah, they're great especially for their first time.
Yeah.
The other one that I eat is edamame all the time.
Oh, I love that. Although I haven't ever made it myself. I've just eaten in restaurants.
Oh, no. You need to get your own and lightly steam them. Not really, because a lot of restaurants cook them way too far.
Yeah. Okay.
Kale chips.
Oh.
You can find them at the farmer's market. I've actually grown edamame myself. It's really tasty.
I'll have to look for
Kale
that.
chips are another great one. They have a little bit of a taste where it feels a little like junk food because it's crunchy and it's salty, but then it's ridiculously healthy. So,
is there a particular type of? I have made kale chips before, and I was I would say, so successful in it. But I think maybe I didn't use the right kind of kale.
Yeah, I think. Well, I've often made them actually in the food dehydrator, and then used curly kale, and then put a sauce on them. And then I think also if you make them in the oven, you got to make sure you don't overcook them, because overcooked kale is sort of like overcooked Brussels sprouts. And just kills the flavor.
The epitome of nasty mush.
Right.
Yeah. Tastes way too healthy.
Well, let's talk about the food waste ideas then. And Sarah, I really appreciate you saying that when you make your own almond milk, you have the sort of the pressed almond meal left over, and you can use that in baking. But, what other things can we do to help? Eliminating food waste, I would say the first thing is planning, so that you try to not have too much waste.
I think awareness comes before planning.
Oh, awareness first.
Actually,
okay.
I would encourage everybody, I did this as an exercise, is measure how much we had left over after we ate. Not crazily, but
right.
Boy, there's always a half plate or a full plate. We left half the pan uneaten. Now, we also kind of cook with this idea of having leftovers.
Right.
So it doesn't really occur to you unless you look at your food that you are one of the people who is contributing to the 47% food waste in the United States.
Yeah.
And if we could bring that down, even down to 35%, you could basically feed everybody in this country with relatively inexpensive produce and other staples that we're just throwing away today. And you'll see this movement. There's an awareness, and we'll be featuring more and more stories about this. We have an upcoming article. It'll be out by the time this hits, actually, by a young woman here in the Seattle area who started a Change.org petition addressed to Panda Express, asking them to stop doing or offering single-serve or single-use plastics.
Yeah.
And, this is a 15-year-old who decided she wanted to make a difference. We've got another Change.org petition guest coming up as well, who is aiming at Target and asking them to be better about both their packaging and how they operate their stores. So, but, as you become aware of all this, then you can start to think about what to do. Yeah. Buy less. Buy differently, in other words, to change your food and carbon footprint. And then there's what do you do with it? That's where planning has come in.
Right.
So either you plan for leftovers or you don't. And when you don't make your plan, you need something to take it. And one of the things we have on the site and are pointing to is 4 composters for really small spaces. One of these is, I love this, it's Mr. Eco Kitchen Composter, which brings back Back to the Future kind of visions. But these are all essentially kitchen-sized composters. One of them is a cute little pink rolling.
I liked that pink rolly one.
Yeah. And they this allows you to take the food waste that you have in your home and put it back to work in your own garden, which I think is the most essential step you can make. If you want to send this stuff off to your commercial composting, it will be used, but it really makes more of a difference if you keep it right there. You don't pay to transport it. You don't pay to process it. You don't add carbon and all the other things that go with a landfill.
I think when you start composting too, you separate out your food waste, and so you really get more in touch with what is actual waste. Like say a peel on a banana, which you really have no interest in eating, and what might just be overzealous cooking and having too many leftovers. So I think composting is a great way to begin to notice how food is being wasted. Yeah,
it kind of forces an inventory of your practice.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, and there are all kinds of things you can do with your leftover bits, like if you're cutting up vegetables, even if you have stem bases and things like that, you can, put them in a crock pot or a, soup pot with water and make vegetable stock. Now, I have to admit, usually I have more enthusiasm for this idea than actually doing it. But, a lot of these things, it's really just a question of getting your time organized. Because I do like the idea of having vegetable stock in the freezer available to me when I want to make something. And so I can see doing that.
And people can, particularly kids, can get engaged with this. And even though my daughter's 23, she has this thing about taking onion leftovers and planting them. So we have onion plants all over the yard. And she just takes satisfaction in taking something that she was going to throw away and planting
turn it
and
into a
having
living
plant.
thing. I can totally understand that.
So it's a great way to engage kids.
One thing I've been doing a lot is trying to give more of my food scraps to the chickens, because we have a few flocks of laying hens around the neighborhood. And we've also had neighbors that have bunnies too, so I'll give kale stalks to them, or some of the things that you were talking about, Evelyn, that you could make a soup base out of.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
With the chickens, it just works out great because, like I might send my kids to school with a pasta salad. And then if they bring half of it home, it's been out all day. Who knows, how clean their hands were when they were eating. It just doesn't look very appealing.
Right.
But then it does seem a little too good to just compost it. So I think feeding things to animals is kind of a great middle path.
I think that's really great. We have a friend of ours who sits with our cats, although we're down to just one cat now, when we're away. And she has chickens, and she takes the leftover cat food that's in the bowls after the cats are done with it, and she takes it home and adds it to her,
I hope you're not going to say soup.
No, to her meal for the chickens. She adds it to her chicken food. She does not eat the cat food. She feeds it to her chickens, who are very happy to eat the leftover cat food.
They'll eat a lot of stuff. They like leftover rice, oatmeal, pretty much any kind of grain. They'll eat a lot of vegetables, all kinds of stuff. I've been amazed. I fed them artichokes, like, the part of the artichoke that you don't eat.
Yeah.
And they just devoured them. So even things that are almost going beyond food waste, because it's not quite something that humans would consume, that the chickens will.
Oh, interesting.
So one last article to share, and it's another one by Lisa Barris, is she did a green trip up the Carmel Coast in California, which is it's a fun article to imagine going on the trip yourself. But some of the meals she describes, such as at Hofsa House. The Hummus Bar and Grill in Tarzana. That's what I'm looking at. But she had marinated mushroom hummus, tahini drizzled falafel with fried cauliflower. These are
Sounds
wonderful
good.
meals that you can go out and by beginning to explore them in places like this, learn and take the ideas home. And then, the whole trip is about how these communities, whether it's Carmel or an individual hotel, are dedicated to being completely circular.
That's great.
It's a great read to just kind of be inspired by and imagine your vacation.
There's some really good cookbooks just out too. I just ordered today the new one by Jose Andres on vegetables, and one of his things is a recipe for baking potatoes in compost. So we'll see.
Okay, now I really have to think about that one.
No, well, I'll get
they're
the
using
book
the
and then
heat
we'll
of the
see.
compost pile to bake the potato?
I think he may use the compost in also
You
cook
plunge
them.
your potato into your compost?
I don't know. We'll see. I'll get the book and I'll let you know. But if Chef Andre is doing it, it must be delicious. He's the
My
best.
reading was the Handbook of Recycling. So.
Okay. Well, different interests,
Well,
So,
same end.
Same end. So, Earthling questions. These are really hard questions this week, so be ready.
Well, folks, so every time you've got a question, if you want to direct it to us, there's 3 ways to do it. Let me just run that down. You can ask us on Facebook. You can send us email at feedback@earth911.com. Or you can use the Earthling Forum, which more people are starting to visit and use. So we'll seek to answer your question on each of those channels within a day. It doesn't always happen that fast, but if not, we'll ask the question on the air, and here we go.
Okay.
So Sherry on Facebook asks, what is a good way to get rid of trash without using a trash service? Can I burn it? Well,
Wow.
the first answer is, Sherry, please don't burn your trash. And she and I have had a dialogue on Facebook about why she asked the question. And it's because she's retired. She does not want to pay for her trash hauling because she doesn't feel she's getting her money's worth out of it, and is looking for alternatives. She also has a couple of steps she's already started to take in response to her financial constraints. So her life is forcing her to think this way. So she's started to recycle, and she's trying to figure out what to do with her cat waste, which is a problem. And we've got articles about how to do that. So we pointed that out. But ultimately, she wants to stop producing waste and stop paying for trash. So if you're considering doing that, there are several ways to do so, one of which is an experiment we'll be starting soon at Earth911 that might be able to help, and we'll be talking more about that soon. But we would not encourage anybody to burn their trash, and there's a number of reasons why. Simple air quality, but then there might be pollutants in the trash that is particularly bad. And that would, so lead or asbestos or anything that you might, construction waste kind of stuff that would put off toxins, it'll settle back in your yard because these are heavy elements that fall right back down. And you don't want to do that to yourself, so don't burn your trash.
I think, so if I gave myself the challenge here, living in Tacoma, I live in a city, we have trash pickup. I don't actually think it's an option to not get your trash picked up here. But if I wanted to try to do without trash pickup, I think I could do pretty well by going to the recycling center and really being very scrupulous about trying to recycle every single thing. Because you can recycle all your paper, phone books, everything. There's a bin for books, so if you're want to pass on books. There's a Goodwill station, so clothing, shoes, furniture. There's a place where you can recycle small appliances. But the hard thing would be plastics. Like plastic wrap is not recyclable.
Well, it is. It is accepted, but it depends on the locale.
Yeah,
but what's
here
accepted
in my town,
is
no.
dependent upon the hauler's decision and not on what the recyclers are willing to pay for. So the question is, how do you take the hauler out of the picture? And that's where we're starting to do some experimentation.
Good. But I think, Sherry, you might be able to do this. It's going to take some hard work, though, because between composting your food waste and especially if she can go to a recycling center and take a lot of her other stuff, she might be able to do it. But some things are going to be really hard.
So you want to ask the second question?
Yeah, Tim. Oh, man, this is a really, really hard question. This is a bad situation for Tim. I need to dispose of non-friable asbestos. And I need to know how to go about it and what the cost is to do so. If you can and then your answer is the next one.
So non-friable means that it's not going to flake.
So that's good.
That's good. So it makes it a little easier to transport. But this is something you're going to need to have. If you can take it, you're going to need to take to a hazardous waste facility. But you're going to end up paying for the disposal by weight. It's going to be a hazardous material. And you are risking whatever exposure you might face in transporting it. So I would really recommend that Tim, and we did tell him this, call a specialized removal company. Yeah. There are plenty of programs that will accept asbestos in the country. In Tim's case, unfortunately, he's 100 miles from the closest one. And that's the other problem, is how far away can you reasonably expect to take anything? And the specialized hauler is going to be able to solve that problem. So, you're going to spend 3 days trying to get rid of this stuff.
At least.
Pay for somebody to come and take it and make sure that they will then be able to tell you what they did with it. That's the step that most people don't take, is to make sure that you send me the receipt that this was actually taken to a hazardous waste facility. Yeah,
I wouldn't fool around. Even if it is non-friable asbestos, I would definitely call a licensed asbestos.
Somebody who handles and removes it.
Yeah.
Now, in this case, it sounds like it's loose in the sense that it's probably in a shed or somewhere, but it's not a material to fool around with. No. Yeah. Well, and I did workers' comp for many, many years. So, I mean, the particles get in your lungs and workers take those particles home to their families. It's very, very hazardous to your health. We
it
did
will
when I was
you.
a kid in school, too. I mean, I remember the asbestos flaking off the roof.
Oh, sure.
Remember that, Doug?
Sure. So our last one, also this one is kind of another horror story. I mean, these folks who unfortunately find themselves with like metal drums full of bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary on Facebook says, "Can you tell me how to dispose of a 55-gallon metal drum that contains 20 gallons of pool shock? The drum is beginning to rust through, and the chlorine is contaminated with rust particles."
Okay, so pool shock is probably chlorine. She wasn't specific
Must be
about
some
this.
kind of, treatment chemical for pools.
Chlorine is dangerous. It's dangerous both as a chemical or as a liquid and as a gas. And it can become gaseous by being exposed to heat, so you want to be careful about how you handle it. It's weird. We get this question, and it's always 55-gallon barrels that somebody left in my house before I bought it. First off, you should, when you buy the house, insist they take the barrel with them. That's a good one to keep in mind, folks. If somebody says, "Oh, but we got some stuff out back," don't worry about it.
We'll come back for it, too.
They're going to end up worrying about it, which is the case with Mary. She didn't buy this. So chlorine, it's dangerous. She shouldn't be handling it. It can also burn you. Because it's rusting through. That means the chlorine itself is contaminated. And probably not easily recyclable. In either case, it needs to go to a hazardous waste facility. Because she's got 55 gallons, it's probably going to have to go not to a household hazardous waste facility, but to a commercial hazardous waste facility. And it's not likely in this case that a recycler is going to come pick up the barrel because neither the barrel nor the chlorine is in good enough condition to recover. So, and that unfortunately is the real truth in all of this, is the economic viability of the recycling defines what you can recycle. In this case, just like with Tim and his asbestos, get somebody to take it and provide you the documentation that it was legally and responsibly recycled or disposed of at a hazardous waste facility, rather than trust someone to take it away, because that's how she got in the situation in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, and I would even venture to say, if it is someone who's just offering to get rid of it for you, they will literally dump it somewhere. So you've got to use a professional, and I agree. Get them to provide you with some sort of certification so that you know what happened to it.
There are a lot of companies around the world that are working on how you document that step. I was talking with a company in Austria called Waste Bin, and they're doing it with smart bins that go to a construction site. Whatever you dump in is monitored by an optical scanner, and so they can basically tell not only when the bin is full. These are one of these big construction bins, but they can tell what's in it.
Oh, that's good.
And that's the beginning of what we're talking about is end-to-end documentation. Going back to what we were talking about, the food supply, right? You should be able to say where did it come from, but also where did it go?
Right. Interesting. Interesting questions, hard questions. And I'm really glad I don't have giant drums of mystery substance at my house.
Well,
That's helpful.
Every home ought to have one mystery substance.
Well, I could go into detail about, radioactive cat waste when we had a cat treated for hyperthyroid, but I won't. So
that's a terrible waste problem.
Now I will. So you literally store it at your home for 3 months for the radioactivity to expire, and then you can dispose of it. So you have.
Okay, so I'm making astonished face.
You are making astonished face. Yeah, the things we do.
Here's my radioactive cat poop.
Pretty much. Here's a box of it. So let's do a quick mention. Recent interview that's up on the website. I don't think we talked about this with Scott Wiggins.
Yeah, Scott's the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety at the Institute for Scrap Recycling Industries, or ISRI, which is an industry organization based in Washington, D.C. for the recycling industry. By the way, Earth911 is a member.
Yes.
Full disclosure. And on June 12th, the recycling industry had what they call a safety stand-down day. And so for each shift at each of these locations, and this is a program both of OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Hazards Agency, and ISRI, where they take the whole team for an hour and work on safety. They close down and just focus on this. Now, it's really interesting on a couple of levels. The interview covers what you should be doing to make sure those people are safe, what you should and shouldn't put into your bin. But it was one of the biggest sources of injuries, after the kinds of injuries caused by lithium batteries that are put into the waste where they shouldn't be and things, is, and this is also an argument for why the way we organize this is maybe not quite right. Drivers of waste haul, the trucks, running over people in the scrapyard because they're distracted.
Oh,
They're on their phones.
right.
And so more people are getting run down by garbage trucks.
That is just not the way to go.
And we can change this. They can change, the industry can change it by putting new rules in place, which Scott talks about. But we can also help change it by making sure that we're not adding to the problem. And the problem can be we were talking about plastic film. Plastic film, if it's not collected in the right way,
Right.
can jam up a machine and stop work for days. It can hurt somebody. Somebody reaching in to try to take that film out of a gear can lose a hand. And one of the stories I came away from the national conference back in April most concerned about were the medical sharps. And I talked to a gentleman who ran a yard who had 2 people contract AIDS.
Yeah.
Or HIV. From medical sharps that were run through their system without being in the right kind of containers. And one of the things that I was surprised by is it's kind of common sense that if you have a medical sharp, you put it in
A sharps container.
or
something.
or a aluminum can.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually a thing a lot of people do. But the problem is that when the aluminum can goes through, you don't see that it has sharps in it. It goes into the shredder, and then you've got needle everywhere.
Right. Little bits of needle probably too.
And those little bits of needle are the ones that can get jammed into a hand on the conveyor belt where they do the sorting. Again, another reason to think about why we mix all this stuff back up after it's been sorted to the curb. But it's a really important issue in the sense that we all play a part in the safety of the people who help us stay clean.
Well, good points. Good points. Well, anything else before we close out?
Well, keep an eye out, folks. If you have had our iRecycle app in the past or are still using it, and many of you are, we're going to be releasing new versions for both Android and iOS in the next few weeks. And that'll allow you to search by material for your local options. You get to see all the options. You can create favorites. You can set it up so you get the information to route from home or to work to those places. And we'll be adding some other interesting capabilities to that app in the future. One of the things that'll be much better in the new version is the ability to read the website. Oh,
excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, that's it for this episode on food. We would love your feedback. You can email us feedback@earth911.com, or you can get us through the website. Stay tuned on all of your normal platforms, or check us out at the website, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.